All right, show number 2 to talk about Joe Thuney becoming a Chicago Bear. We had an emergency pod earlier. Now we're getting rolling with our full-blown noon show. As always, CHGO Bears starts right now. CHGO Bears Podcast, busy week. You thought free agency started next week. Well, Ryan Poles and company said, we're just going to make a bunch of trades this week. We're going to get the offensive line done now. Why wait till next week when you can do it right damn now?
When you have the best GM in the game,
you
don't sit around. You know, after 3 years at 5 wins a year, he's had enough. He's had enough. And hey, give me Jonah, give me Thuney. Give me Greg Braggs. Yeah. Look who's here.
Yeah, no, great job on the emergency podcast this morning.
You.
No, Ed, I appreciate that, but it was very informative for those of you that didn't have a chance to check it out after the show is over. Make sure you go check that out as well.
And we are certainly bear watching right now. This is our bear watching segment. Check out the full line of Right On products today at rightonoptics.com/CHGO. That's Right On Optics, RITON optics.com/CHGO as we continue to watch what Ryan Poles is doing. Who do you see out there, Carman?
You know what? I think because of my amazing Right On binoculars that I'm not holding, but you just feel me. They're there. I think I can see my guy all the way down in Kansas City because we need a KC angle on this. You hear him nationally on the Harrison Experience, and you also hear him in Kansas City on the afternoon show, 96.5 The Fan, which when I was down there, they had a great radio station called 610 Sports Radio, and now they just renamed it and went FM, and now I feel like a little bit lonely on my past history. But nobody covers the Chiefs better than this guy. What's up, Carrington Harrison? Thanks for making time for us, brother.
I'm doing great, man. I'm happy to come on for I'm a little upset that you didn't have me come on the emergency pod. I had to come on the secondary pod. Like you couldn't, like when you first thought of this trade, why did you not think of me first to pop on?
Well, great question. Feel free to list all the people you texted before C-Dot.
You know, if we're gonna go with the honest trade, listen, if Carrington can get Danny Parkins or Nick Wright on over me, he's gonna do that, and then he'll come to Carm. Our KC Chiefs guy who does his pod is Matt Verderame, so he did get the first call, and Verderame came up short, and now we went for Carrington, who of course is his own level of brilliance. But if we're going truth here, that is what happened. I understand you're upset.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, I love Nick. I don't know if Nick is the person to call for a breaking Joe Thuney trade. I think I'm higher up the list than that. This is how I would like to begin this conversation because I think this is really important. Kansas City has told you that we don't think it's a good allocation of resources to invest this much in guard. And the Bears, who obviously have a great track record of just winning championships and building quality rosters, they're going to do the opposite of what Kansas City thinks is a good idea. The Chiefs picked the younger guard to keep, and they were happy to trade the older guard. You guys now want it just I understand that the Bears are desperate for offensive line help, and I do really like Joe Thuney, and I'm sure we'll talk about him. But just from a positional value, how you build your roster, the Chiefs just told you that we don't think it's smart to spend all this money on guard, and the Bears were like, okay, we will. I don't know if that's a good exercise.
That's not the whole story. The Chiefs had to pick someone so they could keep Trey Smith. I totally understand this from both sides. I understand why the Chiefs had to do this. They said they're keeping Trey Smith. They would have, if they made a different decision and not franchise tag Trey Smith, which would have been dumb. So the Chiefs are doing this right. Don't get me wrong. But they would have gladly extended Joe Thuney if they weren't in the situation where they had to get under the cap before next week.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It is a little tongue-in-cheek, and I also think we know that if Trey Smith had hit free agency, the Bears would have been near the top of the list to try to go get him. I think it was fairly obvious that the Bears are desperate for offensive line help. The Chiefs were potentially going to have at least one really good offensive lineman hit free agency or available for a trade, and they went and got one in Joe Thuney. I think a positive for Thuney, kind of looking at it from the Bears' perspective, is Joe Thuney has started at every position on the offensive line in the NFL. You saw last year that he could play left tackle for you in a pinch. He might be the best left guard in the National Football League. Now, it's not going to be cheap. You guys are going to have to reach an extension. I'm guessing that's probably a 2-year, $42 million extension for a 33-year-old left guard. But for a team that is desperately trying to figure out if they have the quarterback of the future or not, I understand why the Bears did this.
Do you think he can still play at that level? Would you give him that money if it was you, if you could afford it in a vacuum that you just named with Caleb?
Yeah, if we're talking about a 2-year contract, absolutely. I think this is a very, very good deal to go get Joe Thuney. I guess looking at it from the Kansas City perspective, I think the Chiefs got rid of their best offensive lineman today. And I think that's saying a lot when you look at Creed Humphrey and how good he is, and Trey Smith, the player that they just franchise tagged. I think Joe Thuney has a chance of being a Pro Bowler. If you have been a multiple-time All-Pro and you've been on 3 Super Bowl teams, you certainly have an argument of being a Hall of Famer. So I think you could argue that the Bears picked up, again, I think that you could argue Joe Thuney is one of the 5 to 10 best offensive linemen in the league today, and they got him for a future 4th-round pick in cap space.
Well, once upon a time, the Bears once brought in a guy by the name of Reuben Brown, I believe from the Buffalo Bills, to play guard, and that was the last time I feel like the Bears had a good offensive line, as they made it all the way to a Super Bowl, as I was still a young Gregory P. Allen Braggs trying to have some drinks and enjoy the Bears. But so now you look at this, Reuben Brown to me was like a huge leader in that locker room. I'm curious from your perspective, Thuney's impact, not just on the field, X's and O's standpoint, but this team really needed an influx of leadership. You asked Tevin Jenkins last year at training camp, who's the leader in the O-line room, and he said Ryan Bates, who had just got there. So, like, to me, I think this is the bigger important question to me is what kind of teammate he is, what kind of leader he is to the guys in that locker room.
A+. I think that Joe Thuney will instantly become a fan favorite. This is a guy that has won at every single stop. He was on the Patriots before he came to Kansas City. He then came to Kansas City. They had some issues at left tackle. He switched over. No problem, no complaining. So if that's a question that people have about Joe Thuney, that is something that A+. I don't really see a lot of negatives in Joe Thuney, the player, other than age. But he's been a guy who's been mostly healthy in his career. Like, if you're going to make this trade and lock up the amount of cap space that the Bears are going to have to lock up with an extension, I don't know if you could do much better for what the Bears need at this stage in their franchise than what they're getting with Joe Thuney.
Are you surprised the Chiefs weren't able to get more for him? Like, I get the age and all that, but to your point with what you just said, I think he's missed 2 games his entire career going back to New England. Like, this guy's durable. I think he's still somebody that you would look into extending for a few years. I'm just the NFL is such a weird league. You see these trades where you're like, hey, you got to give 3 first-round picks for this guy, and then, you could just give up 4th and 5th rounders for an all-pro.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly understand that sentiment, and there's a lot of, I guess, complaints about that in Kansas City. I have kind of an age-old philosophy that teams overvalue their veteran players and think that they are worth a lot more on the open market than what they are. We're talking about a 33-year-old left guard. So just from positional value, if right now all 4 of us went down and we said, all right, what's the most important position? Quarterback. What's number 2? What's number 3? You would probably put left guard probably in the late teens, maybe early 20s in terms of positional value. So if that guy's going to be available and he also comes attached with the big contract, I just don't know realistically what people think that you're going to get. I think teams are willing to pay for a premium. Like, let's say that Myles Garrett was available. Sure, you're not getting Myles Garrett for cheap, or if it's a star wide receiver. But if we're talking about an interior offensive lineman, teams just are not going to give you a 2nd-round pick for that kind of player to then have the right to turn around and pay him like he's one of the, like, it's just, to me, this is more about the contract more than anything. Hey, we're happy to take Joe Thuney, but we got to get him at a little bit of a discount because we know immediately we're going to have to turn around and extend him.
Carrington, do you see him coming in day one and being a leader in that offensive line room to what Greg was asking about?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I'm not trying to be funny here. I think Joe Thuney might be your best player on the team now.
You might not be wrong. I mean, he's the only All-Pro.
I mean, he's not even close if you look at his resume. I mean, we don't. We got nothing.
I mean, it speaks volumes when, I saw from our guy Lester Wilfong from Windy City Gridiron. He said he would finish 10th in AP voting for NFL Offensive Player of the Year, but as a guard like that. But that's insane to me.
But he's not coming in to be humble. He's comfortable. Bam, I'm here. I've done this. I'm going to lead this group. He has that.
Yeah. I would consider Joe Thuney like a crock pot. Like, he's not something you got to worry about. He doesn't need a whole lot of attention. You just put the food in over there, and you come back in a couple of hours, and you're going to have an amazing meal. You guys will never have another conversation about Joe Thuney after this week. He is going to be very good. He is going to be a positive. He is going to be healthy. He's going to play at a high level. You guys have a lot other things to worry about. Joe Thuney is not one of those things.
So now that and we appreciate all the information, but let's just get down to it real quick here. Now that Patrick Mahomes' Super Bowl run is over, where do you think he'll land in all-time quarterbacks, considering that, he's on the back end of what was once a great career?
He's on the back end. He's not even 30 years old yet. He's on the back end of it. Now, I will say this is what you get when you get the beats in the Super Bowl like the Chiefs got. But let's not forget that the Chiefs played 19 games last year and they won 17 of those. Let's just not forget that about Kansas City. So, yes, it was a bad Super Bowl Sunday. People were trying to leave our Super Bowl party earlier. And I was like, no, if I got to watch this entire game for work, you are going to sit here next to me and you are going to watch all of this. Don't try to give me this, no, it's over. No, you are going to sit here. You are going to like it. You are going to enjoy it. But let's not kid ourselves. They are still the best team in the AFC. For all the talk about Lamar and Josh Allen and all these other great quarterbacks, every time I see them in the postseason, they lose to the Chiefs. So until proven otherwise, they are at least the best team in the AFC.
I guess the final thing I have bringing back to Joe Thuney is, how instrumental do you think he was in helping the development of Trey Smith? Obviously, the Bears and a lot of Bears fans wanted Trey Smith. Now we get Joe Thuney, but the Bears also need to try to start developing guys on their offensive line. And Trey Smith was a 6th-round pick who's now looking to become the highest-paid guard. So I'm curious your perspective on how he helped develop and mentor a guy like Trey.
I'm going to assume very instrumental. I don't want to make it seem like I know 100%, but just I think it's important to note that the same offseason that they brought in Joe Thuney, they also brought in Creed Humphrey. They also brought in Trey Smith, and both of those guys started from day one. Like, the Chiefs felt like they had the best interior line in the National Football League when you go from Thuney all the way over to Trey Smith. So this is certainly a loss for Kansas City. You now go from having Joe Thuney there to now going to Kingsley Suamataia, and now the Chiefs are trying to figure out what they want to do at left tackle. So I think, at least from the Kansas City perspective, you have, I would say, a pretty significant loss on the offensive line, and a lot of people are trying to figure out what that means on the other side. But there is obviously a lot of hope and optimism, because in the NFL you can't pay everybody. Like, eventually your credit card bill becomes due. We're seeing that right now with San Francisco. They decided to pay Trey Smith. You knew that was going to come at the expense of something else. So they chose the 27-year-old over the 33-year-old. And now it's the younger, cheaper. Can you continue to maintain that level of excellence, even though you lost a really good player today in Joe Thuney?
What will you remember most about when the Chiefs were good?
I'm not doing this. When was the last time that you guys won a playoff game? Why did you come on here to be ambushed? Adam, what kind of campaign are you guys running over there?
Time out. You started it. You started it.
Carm texted me 10 minutes ago and asked, can I come on? I agreed to come on, and now I got to have yesteryear stories about the Chiefs. I tried to give you guys a serious breakdown.
28 minutes ago. I'm just asking the question. It was a great run, and, now it's over. You lost Thuney. Clearly, Patrick's getting up there. Trey's, that's a lot of money to be spending. It's going to impact the roster. You have deep problems in Kansas City. Hoge?
I just want to point out that as a Kansas City resident, I've seen 4 championship parades in the last decade. So things are going just fine if you live in Kansas City. They still have maybe the best baseball player in the world in Bobby Witt Jr., and they have the best football player in the world. And oh, yeah, the most famous American hangs out here in her free time. So let's not make it seem like things are terrible right now in Kansas City. Carm, I'm not taking this from you. As somebody that lived in Leawood, you know how it is in Kansas City.
6 with me. Hold up the 6.
No. See, Don, I just want you to know that we don't condone this nonsense that this guy does every single day, okay? And I apologize for misreading your shots at Carm earlier when I got a little fired up about Thuney. You did get ambushed here a little bit, but Greg and I and our producer Steven take zero responsibility for it. It was all the guy in the middle.
Carrington's my hero.
Wow, you know what I'm noticing? You guys got terrible leadership. Adam couldn't wait. Adam got in the car, drove it over Carm, looked back, hit it in reverse, and then drove over him again. Terrible. You know who would never do this? Joe Thuney would never do this. Joe Thuney would never call out another offensive lineman. He would take responsibility because that's what great leaders do.
Yeah, no, we need a Joe Thuney in here. That's why I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, no, we do. Hey, I love you. Thank you. You're the man.
Hey, I appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Carrington. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
My man.
See you guys.
The great Carrington Harrison.
All right, we got a lot more coming up on this.
I have a funny Carrington story at the end of the show that I want you to remind me to tell because people will love it. Hoge. Go ahead.
All right. But first, before we get to that, we got to welcome a new sponsor to the show, Timeline. Probably going, what's Timeline?
What is Timeline?
What is the timeline to the next Super Bowl? Well, this is different than that. Timeline sells health and longevity supplements featuring their proprietary MitoPure ingredient. Got to read that one a little bit slowly.
I'm already...
MitoPure works with the cells in your body to help reverse age-related decline. Benefits include increased strength, energy, and endurance. They have done 15-plus years of research and secured 30-plus U.S. patents for their product. So the cells in our bodies are the building blocks of life. We know that. Timeline is a supplement that works with those cells to help give you more energy, feel stronger during workouts, and preserve health and mobility as you start to age. And again, it's MitoPure. That's the patented ingredient. It's a postbiotic nutrient that clears our dysfunctional mitochondria. You know what mitochondria is, Greg? I remember learning about it like 4th grade
Say
science.
it's something you don't want. It's something you don't want.
I've heard of it.
It's like your cell's battery pack.
It's the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. Anytime I have a question about anything when it comes to nutrition, I go to Steven, our producer.
Who's taking these timelines?
He's taking time. He looked at it. He said, this is legit. So I'm all in. Right now, Timeline is giving you 10% off your order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/CHGO today to get started. That's timeline.com/CHGO.
And after you have your timeline, you're going to feel so great that you're going to be like, where am I going tonight? I am going to Hooters, the destination to watch games with your friends. You could have seen the Purdue Boilermakers. Did they win last night?
By 30.
They won. You could have seen them win by 30 with hot wings and cold beer and the experience like no other when you go to Hooters. Had a great time at the Hooters down in Indy. Highly recommend the 11 Hooters locations around here. Highly recommend the $6 cocktails all day, every day. Get yourself a legendary margarita. I mean, come on, live the dream. And, of course, you can also order online, pick up and delivery. The wings are amazing when you take them home. Check them out at originalhooters.com. 11 Chicagoland locations, Aurora, Countryside, Downers Grove, Joliet, Lansing, Melrose Park, Oak Lawn, O'Hare, Orland Park, Schaumburg, and right down here in the Old City on Wells Street. My personal favorite. Shout out to our friends at Hooters. Check them out once again, originalhooters.com.
All right. Greg, I would like to give you the floor here a little bit since you weren't on the emergency pod and we had a guest on right away.
Yep.
You have been a big fan of Joe Thuney for a long time.
Yes.
I know.
The biggest. Yeah, if you're looking for offensive line breakdown, I am the guy to come to.
Let's go.
And I'm glad you guys finally drew your attention to my analysis in this regard. I think it's pretty simple. You know, it comes down to leadership. It comes down to good players make great teams. An all-pro, back-to-back years. When you talk about a guy that, like I said yesterday when we talked about Jonah Jackson, in limited snaps last year, albeit 0 penalties. Joe Thuney last year, in a lot more snaps, 1 penalty. It's about damn time to have some guys in here that can execute, that are disciplined. And so, Ben Johnson, welcome to Chicago, my friend. It seems like you and Ryan Poles are on the right track. We understood the needs, and you're already addressing it before free agency. As a Bears fan, that gets me excited for the future. And I also have the understanding when you talk about having to be patient with the process and letting Ben Johnson build his foundation of an offense. Well, guess what? You don't pay $17 million to Jonah Jackson. You don't extend potentially a guy in Joe Thuney at the age that they're at and say, well, you know, we still got a year where we got to lay the groundwork. No, these guys are ready to start winning. And I'll tell you right now, Caleb Williams, when they show up to minicamp, you know, it's time. It's time to get going. It's time. You're in your second year. It's time to start taking that next step. You got a $13 million head coach. You got a $17 million guard that you traded for from LA. And now you got an all-pro guard from the Kansas City Chiefs. And let's see what they do going forward. They might sign Drew Dahlman. They might draft Will Campbell. So they're leaving no stone unturned to make sure they do right by Caleb Williams as an organization. And now Caleb's got to return the favor and take that next step that we all fully believe he's capable of, and I'm excited to see happen to come to fruition.
All right, we got Fran Duffy coming up in about 8 minutes to talk about the drafting implications. He joins us every Wednesday at 12:30 as our AllCity draft analyst. So there's some things we want to get in here somewhat quickly. I believe we have the snap counts, right, for both Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, because this is something we got to kind of sort out. So let's start with Joe Thuney. Both these guys known for having some versatility, but also primarily being a left guard, if we're being honest. So this goes back to 2020. This is the he was with the Chiefs for 4 years, right? Yeah, so 2020.
I added 2020 because of he played some center.
Because he played some center when he was back with the Patriots. So he signed with the Chiefs going into the 2021 season. So you see, he can play center if he needs to. It's been a long time since he did that, but he could. And then last year, DJ Humphries out for the Chiefs late in the year. He ends up playing left tackle in the playoffs in the Super Bowl. So that's where the 118 snaps at left tackle. But if you really look at this, he's a left guard. Let's look at Jonah Jackson now. Kind of a similar story. He probably has a little bit more versatility, but this is his entire career now. Going back to 2020. So
and notably 2020 to 2023 was when he was with the Lions when Ben Johnson was there as well.
Correct. So for the podcast listeners who can't see this, he played 126 snaps at center in 2020 and 145 at right guard. 66 snaps at right guard last year, 107 at center. Otherwise, other than a couple snaps in 2021, he's been a left guard his entire career too.
But as you see, just in last year, had more snaps at center than he did at any position, including left guard.
Yeah, that's because he was hurt, though.
Right, and he got moved off of his position.
If he had been healthy, though, I think that would have looked a lot.
I'll say this, just looking at those charts, and obviously both guys are predominantly a left guard in their career. Well, only one of them can play left guard, and I happen to think that the two-time All-Pro will be the one they slot in at left guard.
Yeah, no.
So then it comes down to where is Jonah Jackson going to play, right guard or center? And I do think that's an interesting conversation. I think on its surface, it appears it'll be right guard.
Well, I hope so, because I'm tired of the Bears, for lack of a better phrase, dicking around at center. Because I'm just sick of it. Like, go get a real center. Go get a guy who's used to seeing the protections, calling out the protections, knows the position, not trying. So I'm, which leads us to the next question here, because I got all this here. Would you go all in for Drew Dahlman? Because Joe Thuney, let's just go through the money here for a second. $16 million in cash, $16 million cap hit, and that's maybe the Bears will extend him, restructure some things, maybe. But it's still that's even more of an investment, which is the point of what I'm trying to make here. Jonah Jackson, $17.5 million in cash. Guys, we don't talk enough about the cash. The cap matters a lot. But at the end of the day, we're going to sit here last week and have a conversation, 2 weeks ago, and have a conversation about the Bears raising season ticket prices. There's still a cash flow here. There's still Ryan Poles came can worry about the cap and his whole team. Kevin Warren and George McCaskey, they're worried about the cash. Okay, so regardless of what the cap is, you're paying Jonah Jackson $17.5 million this year. He's starting. He's a starter. You don't pay $17.5 million to sit on the bench. So the question then becomes, where is that, which we just sort of discussed. The cap hit's only $11.8 million. Do you still go all in for Drew Dalman? Because all of a sudden, PFF's projected contract, $14 million a year for Drew Dalman. We're talking
Hoge math.
$46 million in cash. And I wouldn't be surprised if Dalman gets more than that. $46 million in cash for your interior offensive line. Let me be very clear. I don't hate that. I love building the interior of the offensive line. But I'm just saying that all of a sudden is a big investment per year. But you get what you pay for, so I don't hate it.
Well, you also have a lot of flexibility. I'm assuming you'll get an extension with Thuney if he's willing to do it, and the Bears are all in. Maybe that happens, but maybe not. And you also you're going to have flexibility. You do not have to you don't have to pay more than the $17 million at right guard. So where I get to is these are win now moves. These are veteran players. You're not trying to do anything but get as many victories as you can in 2025. And so when you look at this on a win now Joe Thuney move, to me, it's worth spending the money on Drew Dalman so you solidify the offensive line. I'm not saying Drew Dalman's perfect, little undersized, all that, and you're overpaying for him, but he puts the offensive line together. It gives you a ton of flexibility when it comes to the draft, and it just feels like the missing piece. So you're not thinking about 3 years down the road. I don't even think you're thinking about 2 years down the road. You are establishing yourself this year with Caleb on a Ben Johnson hopeful rocket ship to the playoffs.
But I also think there's a difference between win now and going all in.
Yes, I agree.
Because what this Thuney trade is, this is what I've been talking about for years with other good franchises being like, you don't want that really good player anymore? We'll take him. And you see trades like this all the time. We'll send a 4th round pick for a really good player. And so I think it's a savvy, yes, it's a win now type of move, but it's not trade all your 1st round picks for Khalil Mack all in.
Right.
These types of trades are what the Chiefs and the Eagles do all the time.
Which is why I love it, by the way. Absolutely. But the Dalman thing would be more of an all-in thing. You'd be paying a premium.
And Ryan Poles has been pretty smart about contract structuring, at least in the regard of, I'm going to put all my money early on so it doesn't affect me too far down the road. But overall, if you want to get, I'm not against getting Drew Dalman just as a fan that says if they get Drew Dalman on first day of free agency, the Bears offensive line is set. And I didn't think we'd have that for this season.
Yes and no, though.
Not really.
You still got left tackle. What are you doing?
I understand the work isn't finished, but that's my point is then you can go into the draft and you trade back in draft Gray's able to develop, deciding where you want to put him on the line, whether it's center or left guard. Or you draft Will Campbell, are you developing to become your left tackle or your left guard of the future? You have options there. This was the quote that I wanted to bring up yesterday that I finally found from Kalen Kaler. And this is Ben Johnson talking about how important intelligence is across the entire offense. And this was Ben Johnson's quote. "We do it because we can. That's why this offense is the way it is, because we have smart players. We have a veteran offensive line that's played a lot of ball. We have a quarterback that can handle a lot on his plate, and we've got good, smart perimeter guys that are willing to block and do all the dirty work and prepare during the course of the week. I'm fortunate as a coordinator because when you have that, now you take the governor off and you can do almost anything you want to do. And it's not like that at every place. I've been a number of places, a number of different offenses and coordinators, and we just couldn't push it to this level, and that's a credit to the guys. That has nothing to do with us as a coaching staff, but we'll push it as long as we think it's sound and it can help them out. We'll push it to the limit." The whole takeaway from that is smart players, guys that have played a lot, offensive line. So he's trying to build that for him. Obviously, you're not going to have the same level of, veteranship that Goff had with Caleb Williams. He's still got a lot to learn. But you're checking that box for an offensive line standpoint that are going to have played a lot, know what they're doing, are smart, can execute, and are disciplined. And that, to me, is going to help open the door for other players around the offense to develop.
All right. We got to get Fran in here. I'll just make one last point. Nate Tice yesterday was on Hogan Johns. He kind of threw, speaking of wet blankets, he's not a huge fan of Dahlman.
What'd he say?
You have to tune into Hogan Johns for that.
Hey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go home and listen to Hogan Johnson.
You should.
That'll be a good time.
Yeah. No, questioning the fit a little bit. And I think something we've talked about plenty on this show, too, is not a huge inventory out there. Are you overpaying?
You are.
Yeah. So one question I have for Fran coming up is
who's our starting center?
Do you try to hold out for one of these centers in the draft, and who are they, and what's realistic? So we will talk to him about that next. But first, shout out to our friends at Lucy, 100% pure nicotine, always tobacco free. The Lucy Breakers. Those are nicotine pouches with a little extra surprise for you. Every pouch holds a capsule that can be broken open to release the extra flavor, the hydration you are looking for. And yes, a bunch of flavors to try. You will find one for you. And the easiest way to do this, set yourself up for a subscription, have Lucy delivered straight to your door. Let's do the Bears are leveling up their offensive line. Let's level up your nicotine routine with Lucy. Go to lucy.co/CHGO. Use the promo code CHGO2025. You get 20% off your first order. You get a 30-day refund policy if you change your mind. One more time, that's lucy.co. Use that code CHGO2025 to get 20% off. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. And the warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. All right, so when you know you have a show at noon, and then you're going to do a show with Fran at 10, and then all of a sudden the Bears make a trade, and you have another show even before that, not a whole lot of time to eat.
It isn't.
So what did I do in between the last two shows?
I watched you do it. That's why I wanted you to tell everybody about Factor, because it looked so delicious.
I had my Factor ready to go.
You did.
I went smoked Gouda chicken today. It was fantastic. Cheese mixed in with the potatoes. It was awesome. So if you're ready to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy, dietitian approved, ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you, like an emergency podcast with a great trade. Just getting all pro, you're ready to go. You can still power your way through it with Factor. You can also lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor keto meals. They have 40 different options across 8 dietary preferences. So really, whatever you're interested in, calorie smart, protein plus, keto, they got you covered. You go to the menu. You can customize it however you want. You get to pick different meals every single week. So eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast. Again, that's code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, let's go to the Hooters Hot Wing Hotline. Bring in our guy, Fran Duffy. Spent the morning with him. Broke down all the running backs, all NFL show. Go check it out. Separate feed, separate channel, YouTube, podcast, however you want to get it. But we went through the edge rushers last week, running backs today. But Fran, I want to tee you up here. It's been a busy couple days for the Bears, who are obviously interested in offensive linemen in this draft too. Just your reaction to them adding Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson here. What you think about those moves, and then I guess we can kind of transition to how that might impact the draft too.
Yeah, I think it's a great job by Ryan Poles, Ben Johnson to go at aggressively at clearly a position of need. Going back and listening to Ben Johnson speak when he first got hired, clearly he pointed to the offensive line. Said clearly we have to get better play there, and so you go and you get an established vet in Joe Thuney, a guy that's got flexibility to play across the front, but ideally is going to be one of those guard spots. And then Jonah Jackson, who played a couple different spots for the Rams last year. Obviously, it didn't go as expected. He ended up being a backup for the majority of the season. Injury played a factor there, but he's got plenty of experience playing under Ben Johnson, and you would think like, all right, he's gonna be the left guard. You guys obviously have better insight into it than I do, but when I look at just trying to fortify the trenches, Braggs, you mentioned it a little before I came on before the break, that this just gives Ryan Poles, it gives Ben Johnson the flexibility where you've got at least like suitable answers, right? Like if it's April 20th and you have to line up and play a game on the 21st, you feel like you've got answers at these positions to be able to line up and play. And now that allows you, once you get to draft weekend, you're not having to force the issue. You don't have to take the offensive lineman if that guy is not the best player on the board, right? And so I think when you're looking at it, I like these additions for the Bears. Doesn't mean that they are done adding offensive linemen. Is it a center in play when you get into the middle rounds? Could they still take a tackle? Absolutely. But I think it does open the door for other positions there when you look at 10 overall.
A lot of talk in the chat today, Fran, about Ashton Jeanty, and which I'm sure doesn't surprise you as I see you smiling. But the name out there that seems to be also out there, moving up the charts here is Omarion Hampton from Carolina. Where are you at with those two after Combine Week?
Yeah, I mean, Genty's awesome. He's one of my favorite players in the draft. I said it to Hoge earlier. I might as well share it since I shared it on that show. I'm doing my mock draft right now. I'm doing a 3-round post-combine mock draft that should be dropping on CHGO here this week. And I've got Ashton Jeanty going in the top 10, but before the Chicago Bears select. I do think that he is going to end up in the top 10 of this draft. And I think when you look at Jeanty, to me, yes, he is the RB1. I love Omarion Hampton. I love Travion Henderson. I love Caleb Johnson. I love a bunch of these backs, but I do think that they are a tier below. And I think that 10 is probably a little rich for Hampton. I think he brings a ton of value. I think he can be a focal point of an offense. I think he fits what Ben Johnson wants to be offensively, but I do think that 10 is a little rich. Now, if they were to do like some kind of massive trade back, you go back like 10, 12 picks, then I think you start getting into Omarion Hampton territory. But at 10 overall, it would feel a little bit rich.
I mean, how much do you think that Caleb Johnson hurt his draft stock with his 40 time? Do you put much weight into that versus what you see on tape?
No, especially like running backs, that's a position where we've seen guys go and have disappointing test scores. I remember where I was standing in the press room when Dalvin Cook jumped like 17 inches in the vert, and everyone's like, oh my God, like this guy's not athletic. And it's like, okay, like he went and obviously was one of the most explosive slashers at running back for the large majority of the first few years of his career. Right. And so, Leonard Fournette, another player that just like, all right, this guy goes and doesn't test well. Didn't affect him, still goes top 5. I think when you're looking at running back testing, that can be a little bit wonky at times. The proof with Caleb Johnson, the way I put it to Hoge earlier today on the All NFL show, Caleb Johnson is a guy that where you get him in the open field, he's going to run faster than the guy chasing him, right? And I think that at the end of the day, that's something that you want certainly from your back, especially if he's 6'2", 220, with his wingspan, that he's just a big, strong, powerful back. So to pair that with his breakaway speed, he's an impressive guy.
Smooth as hell, too. It's fun to watch him.
So all this information we're getting on these running backs, again, it's in today's episode of the All NFL podcast. And all the information on all these prospects available in the draft guide, which if you are a diehard, you can get. Go to allchgo.com/diehard. Now, in your the way you sort out your offensive linemen, you kind of put them in 2 buckets. Yep. Some that are more like tackle guards, and then others that are more guard center. So let's sort through, now that the Bears have added what appears to be 2 starting guards, especially with the money they're going to get paid. If the Bears took a pass on Dahlman and really tried to zero on a center in the draft, who are the guys, like give us 3 guys that would be realistic, probably if the Bears were to trade back in the first round, or more likely in that second round territory with those 2 picks they have?
Yeah, I mean, the first name that comes to mind is going to be Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. This is a guy who's 6'6", 312 pounds. He's played, ironically enough, I mean, he has started games at left tackle, at left guard, at right tackle. He's played some right guard. he's played 17 snaps at center in his career with the Bison. But that's a position where a lot of people feel that might be his best position projecting forward to the NFL. And so that would be the first person that comes to mind. I will say, this center class is pretty shallow, guys. I mean, last year's class, I think there were 3 or 4 starters. It might be up to 5 or 6 by the time we get to 2 years from now from last year's group. My guess is it'll be less than half that here with this group. So I think when you're looking at Zabel, he's the first one that comes to mind there. After that, it would be Jared Wilson from Georgia. He's more of your smaller. He's not small. I mean, he's 6'3", 310, but he's like the hyper athletic, get him out in space, get him up to the second level. He is not your powerful people mover type. And that's why, I think when you're looking at Drew Dahlman, I don't know that he's like a great scheme fit. You look at, Ben Johnson is going to morph his scheme to, whatever the talent he's got at his disposal. So you have to kind of, deal with what you've got. But when you look at the way that they operated with Frank Ragnow, he is your big, 6'5", 325, 330 pound center that can move people off the ball. When they're playing their gap schemes, he's got the ability to mash double teams with his guards. That's not really Drew Dahlman. Jared Wilson has got a little bit more to him than Dahlman does at the point of attack, but that's still not quite his game either. To be honest, the only play that I've watched, I'm like, okay, that maybe he kind of fits. Maybe would be Seth McLaughlin from Ohio State. Now he's coming off an injury. He tore his ACL very late in the season. When you look at the new staff there with the Chicago Bears, there are some Ohio State ties. JT Barrett, established Ohio State guy. When you look at Press Taylor, the pass game coordinator, he worked with Ryan Day here in Philadelphia with the Eagles. So you get some extra intel there on Seth McLaughlin. But I think, to me, if you're looking at center early on in the draft, the two options would be Zabel and Wilson. But because of the short supply, both in the draft and in free agency, there are going to be a lot of suitors there when it comes to finding those two players.
Where do you think Seth will kind of fall in the rankings? I find him to be really fascinating, taking your advice, talking to you a couple weeks ago where you're like, I don't always like to ask about the player. I like to hear how they talk about their teammates. Obviously talking to Seth, he's an impressive young man. I think most centers are always kind of engaging to talk to, but talking to his teammates, Josh Simmons and Donovan Jackson, these guys, the way they talked about Seth McLaughlin and how he had them prepared during the week and how he got them lined up at the line of scrimmage, they sold me more than anything on Seth. So I'm curious where you think he's going to fall in this draft.
Yeah, I think that because of his body type, he's got 31-inch arms. That's going to knock him for a lot of people. That's really short arms for a center. His overall body of work, because you're talking about a guy who's now a 3-year college starter between Ohio State and Alabama, not a guy that's going to wow you from a physical trait standpoint. I think that he would have been probably an early day 3 player if healthy. And so now with the ACL, that clouds it. But because of the scarcity of the position, he might still end up in early day 3, right? And so his projection is a little bit cloudy because you start getting into supply demand, you start getting into the character. I agree that in talking with people at Ohio State, talking with some of his former teammates, those guys have all raved about him. Even talking with opponents, I talked with Iowa linebacker Jay Higgins at the Shrine Bowl, and he said that was the toughest guy I faced all year, the toughest guy I had to deal with in the box. And so I think when you're looking at McLaughlin, there's a lot to like, but again, the projection's a little bit cloudy.
No, I'm just trying to parse down where we're getting at here with the center spot here. If Fran Duffy had to make the call here and you're the Bears, and let's say realistically things fell the way it should fall in the draft, are you going after Dahlman or are you drafting center?
I think I'd probably look at, but that's obviously, look, you're not going to make that. You can't know that you're going to be able to get one of these centers when Dahlman's available, right? And so, at the end of the day, I think I'm probably passing on Dahlman and trying to see if I can find the answer elsewhere. Is there a guy Bradley Bozeman did not play great with the Chargers last year, but he is more of that schematic fit. Can you pass on giving Dahlman the big money contract? You go and you sign Bradley Bozeman to a 1-year deal, and you say maybe he's good. He's our stopgap, gives us the flexibility to line up and play tomorrow, and then you hope that you can get your center of the future or of the present and future on draft weekend. That might be the best plan of attack there for the Bears.
Is it too tall to ask? Is it worth it? Let's say you can't find a trade partner at 10. Do you draft Gray Zabel at 10? Is he worth that pick? Because talking with him at the combine, He obviously likes what he sees with Caleb Williams, has a connection with the trainer. They have a similar trainer that they work with. And honestly, talking behind the scenes, I know there's people within Gray's camp that would love Gray to play in Chicago. Obviously, he'd love to play for any NFL team, but I did hear some things that he would love to play in Chicago. So is that too tall to take him at 10?
I think so. I think that is a little bit rich, and we've talked about how the talent level drops off in this draft, and there's not those blue chip talents. I do think that probably be a little bit rich, but look, if you're going to take everything into account, with the entire evaluation, this is going to be one of those years where some team, like I value Gray Zabel like somewhere it's like in the late teens, like 20s overall in my draft. I got to look and see where he's at on my board, but he's going to be somewhere in there for me personally. Some people might have him in the 30s, some people might have him in the low teens, right? And so now it comes down, and that's how it's going to be for teams as well. So if look, this is a team that has not been afraid to dip into smaller school ranks. We know they spent a day 2 pick in the Ivy League last year in Karan Amagaji. They've taken some smaller school flyers once you get into day 3. But early on in the draft, it's been a lot of Power 5 schools. It's been a small sample. It's only been, we're talking 3 drafts now for Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham. But I think that overall, they have been more big school centric. Are they willing to take an FCS player in the top 10? That would I don't want to say it would be surprising, but I think that it would be a little bit out of character, especially in this class. I think he would probably be more of a trade down candidate, but you still need a dance partner.
Fran, biggest takeaways from Indy. I mean, it's guys that moved up. Like when you were going through your notes and you inputted it all into your draft guide, like what was the biggest movers and shakers from what played out in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the combine is all about expectations, and so for me, like some guys that were seen as like the big winners, like Nick Emanwari from South Carolina, I expected that kind of freak show workout. Like I expected him to look like an alien, and he looked like an alien. You look at Bashal Tutin, the running back for Virginia Tech. He was my number 6 running back coming into the week. He's leaving Indy. He's my number 6 running back coming out. Right, so there are a few guys where I expected them to test well. The big ones are the ones where it's like, all right, like I had questions about the athleticism. Ty Robinson, the defensive lineman from Nebraska, comes to mind. He was a guy that watching him, I saw a lot that I liked on film, but I questioned what the overall athletic upside was. People in Nebraska were telling me I was nuts. The guys that I reached out to on that staff, they said, no, he's going to test really well. I promise. And we were going back and forth during Senior Bowl week, and I was like, he's struggling a little bit, guys. Like he's not looking great. But then as soon as he ran his 40, my phone's blowing up. They're like, oh, I told you. So he's a guy that I will have to go back and continue to do a little bit more work on. But it is good to be able to get that validation in terms of the athletic upside there. So that's one guy that comes to mind. But overall, I try not to let the athletic testing move me too much with too many players. The big thing again is just kind of maybe those slight adjustments, those slight tiebreakers, in those clusters. But overall, a great week, a very productive week in Indianapolis.
All right, go get the draft guide. allchgo.com/diehard. Become a diehard and listen to the All NFL podcast as well.
I got like 15 more questions.
Well, you weren't looking at me while we had the ISO cam on Fran, and I was trying to ask you guys if you had any more questions.
I got like 40. I mean, I know we got them all off season, but I have literally like 40 other questions.
Let's go rapid fire.
Ask one more.
I got, all right, Mason Graham. Where's he? Is he falling?
It's literally on the chart.
No, right I still have him in my top 10. He's going before the Bears at 10 in my mock draft.
No.
It is tricky. It is tricky though to find a suitor because of the just because of the body type, but I still think he goes that high.
All right, Tyler Booker. How did he affect his draft stock?
He was the one I was not expecting him to test well. So he does not drop down my board at all. I think that he still goes in the top 15.
Cam Scattaboo. How come every time we talk about running backs, you don't bring him up?
Because he's number 8, and you should have known that if you watched the All NFL show.
I haven't. I will.
Adam and I get into that one. We get into it a little bit, but Scottaboo, I think that there's a reason why he was a 0-star recruit coming out of high school, late bloomer. The physical limitations do show up a little bit, but I love the player, and I think that he's going to project really well to the NFL.
Dude has amazing legs. Hey, best edge that you think will be available at 10?
I think Michael Williams from Georgia is the guy that I would have earmarked. He was, as I was doing my mock, I was like, this would be the perfect fit for him, going to Chicago at 10. I have him going one pick before. So he's not on the board for the Bears in my mock draft, but that would be one certainly to keep an eye out for.
All right, I got one for you. Bears draft Will Campbell at 10 and play him at center. Your thoughts?
I honestly, Hoge, I talked with people in the summer who were pointing to Campbell and said, like, could center be his best spot? And I know that some teams have talked with him about that in the course of this season. So, that's not completely out of the question. I still do think he goes in the top 10 because everyone knew like the arm length was an issue. So it's not like a huge revelation. That's going to be an interesting discussion though for all 32 teams.
So I talked to Will Campbell about his arm length, and then with the follow-up was like, that being said, would you have any consideration to center and taking on that challenge? And I think he wanted to throw me out the window when I asked him that. So I don't know if he wants to play center as much as the NFL teams do. So that'll be an interesting discussion.
All right, everyone else is doing rapid-fire questions. I got one now. Damian Martinez, what round would you be comfortable with the Bears drafting him?
I think like round 3 is probably the ceiling there. Like you get into the latter stages of round 3. I think that's probably where we're talking Damian Martinez territory. Big back, light feet. He's been productive, but not a ton of tread on the tires has been used up. So I think that he's a player with upside.
And Fran, Gary Ross wants a deep dive on Eli Cox out of Kentucky. So we'll just for next week, if we could just get everything about Eli, that'd be amazing.
And then
let's do that now.
And then
top of the rundown next week, Eli Cox.
And I got 2 more. James Pierce. I was most interested to talk with him, and I didn't feel like I got very much through his 20 minutes talking with the media. Pretty short. Doesn't mean everything you see on tape is great, but there's a lot of chatter about his character. What have you learned about James Pierce and where he's going to fall for teams in that evaluation?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Tennessee D-line is an interesting one because they were so talented and there was like hockey line changes. They were playing 8 deep on that group throughout the majority of the season. And so, look, that allowed him to kind of be used to the best of his abilities as a pure like pass rusher, and didn't play a ton against the run, only a handful of starts this year. The athleticism is apparent. You watch him for 2 seconds on film and you see like, all right, this guy's going to test like a freak and he's going to look great in position workouts. He did that this past week. So, in terms of like the off the field stuff, I don't want to say like mixed reviews might even be a little bit strong, but yeah, I mean, I think there are going to be some questions there when it comes to James Pierce. That said, I think the ability alone is still going to get him into round 1.
All right. Finally, at the combine, who did you have in the first round that when you left, you feel like is going to fall into the second round where the Bears might be able to take advantage?
Good one. I'm like racking through the positions really quick. I think that when you're looking overall, a guy that I feel like is going to fall out of round 1 overall.
10 questions. I finally got a good one.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Stump the Duff.
But you know what Fantastic is doing for you is he's actually taking the time.
And you know what we're doing? We're stalling while he finds that.
Yes, you're doing an outstanding job of riffing.
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
No, I think that the one that I think is interesting, and this guy it's not that he did something at the combine that hurt his stock, but I think when you look at cornerback Azareye'h Thomas, the corner from Florida State, he is a guy that was getting some first round buzz. I had some questions about the speed on film, and when he goes to the combine, doesn't run. I think that there are certainly going to be some questions there. This is not a player from Notre Dame or Ohio State or Texas where they were playing deep in the playoff. Florida State's season was essentially done in the last week of November. He had plenty of time to get ready. He was down at the Senior Bowl, had plenty of time to train and get ready for this, but didn't go through the full battery of tests. That would be one where I'm like, okay, are we actually talking about a first round corner? And is that a guy that would make sense for that defense? I know that they're pretty happy with some of the young talent they've got there, but that would be one that kind of comes to mind there, Braggs.
All right. Appreciate the rapid fire.
Fran, great stuff. Appreciate it.
Sounds good, guys. We should wrap that up every episode with a rapid fire. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. No, it was really good. And again, scan that QR code. Become a diehard right now. allchgo.com/diehard. We'll talk to Fran again next week and check out our pod on the running backs today.
Maybe just workshopping this, but maybe we start doing rapid fire. We'll let the diehards get a few in there from the Discord and stuff.
Excellent. Excellent idea, Greg.
All right.
Love it. All right, guys. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. See you, Fran. All right, now we got to hit on something, and it's a bad job by us because number 57 should be displayed prominently on this table in front of us today.
Get the jersey, please. I'd like to put it on.
I was thinking about
Steven.
I wanted to digest the Sanborn thing a little bit.
Carm cried himself to sleep last night.
Yeah,
Thank you.
A very weird video on our Twitter that I apologize for.
I love that video.
Sure,
That's
you
on
did.
you.
I'm surprised by this. I'm surprised by this for a number of reasons.
We all are.
Devastated.
And I could tell you without doubt that this was not a unanimous move inside the building to just let Sanborn go. I'm confused by it. Like, I don't think anybody's sitting here claiming that Jack Sanborn's an all-pro or anything. But
I am.
okay,
But-
I'd like to seriously talk about Jack Sanborn right now if we can.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. This guy did nothing but play good football for 3 years. When they asked him to start games, he started games. When they asked him to just be the Sam backer and come on the field for 20 to 30% of the snaps, he did that well. He was always around the ball. He's an excellent special teamer. He's just a good football player. To not even tender him just it makes no sense to me. The last player I can remember like this that I was confused on what the Bears were doing, and they ended up being right about, by the way, was Cam Meredith. Cam Meredith was an undrafted free agent out of Illinois State who played really, really well and went into the 2017 season actually as their number one wide receiver. Now, that depth chart of wide receivers was god-awful, but he was a good player. He tears his ACL. Well, let me back up a little bit. So fast forward, actually. So they let him go when he was at this point in his career. He was a restricted free agent. The Saints signed him to, I think it was like $9 million offer sheet. And the Bears said, no, thank you, and they let him walk. Now, there's two differences. Because I was not happy with that one, too. I remember writing a column, being like, they made a mistake here. Now, they ended up being right, but there's two major differences. One was what I just hinted at. He tore his ACL. He blew out his knee. It was a significant knee injury he had in the preseason. That's not Jack Sanborn's situation right now. And they still tendered him, which is my point. They still put a tender on him that gave them the opportunity that when the Saints came with an offer sheet, they could have matched it. Now, they had the medicals. It was a significant amount of money, and they let him go. So in the end, and it certainly ended up being the right call because Cam Meredith was never the same. This is not that situation, though. So the only thing this must just be a scheme thing. But man, it just feels like the Bears are letting a good football player out of the building for nothing. I do not get it.
Bottom line, you just really echoed everything that I put on that amazing video yesterday. So let me get it.
Yeah, I must have missed the part where you talked about Cam Meredith and
the Cam Meredith part. That was a good ad. Good ad by you on Cam. Excellent point. I did not have Cam.
He
Meredith.
also did it where he didn't look as goofy.
Right.
It's theater, Gregory. So it's okay.
Your theater, all right.
That's right.
Clown.
We all have our brands. Yours is certainly unique and fascinating and amazing. But here, look.
Some brands are affecting others.
Yeah. As we get to the top of the hour, just a reminder about becoming a diehard, because Jack Sanborn was a diehard, and Jack Sanborn.
You're only 2 minutes early on that, buddy.
That's okay. It's all right.
Let's see him do it.
I get ahead.
Minute diehard.
I get ahead of the
As we
game.
leave.
Sometimes, some people get behind the game. I like to get ahead of the game. And
usually
for the record, Hoge, I was ahead of the game on Jack Sanborn. When he was making plays his rookie year, when he finally got out there, it was I'm like, this dude's everywhere. And then then I asked Alan Williams a question. Remember Alan Williams? Hey, anybody standing out to you out there? I didn't think he was going to say it. And he went at Sanborn. And then they decided to go pay Tremaine, and then they just slow played him basically out of Chicago. In essence, is what's happened here.
Well,
it's just it's confusing to me. I get to me what happened here is that he doesn't fit their measurables of what they want in a linebacker.
I don't care. He's around the football.
Exactly.
And honestly, I think Dennis Allen's scheme is better for him. He can freelance. He can get to the ball.
Exactly. And the other thing is, look, I don't care how long you are or how fast you are or what you run. How fast are you willing to run into that wall right there and risk life and limb to be a football player and make plays? And that dude was willing to put himself in harm's way. all the time. You need dudes like that. They matter. Sure, other guys are going to be longer, faster, and going to look better on paper. But as far as understanding what's going on and being willing to go, why is TJ Edwards so effective? He's willing to put himself in harm's way all the time, and he's very smart and he's active. The Bears lost a good football player in this, and it was going to cost them a little bit over $3 million to keep him. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you tie it back to some Bears things that have happened in the past, so like Nick Kwiatkowski comes to mind, I think, for a lot of fans.
Sanborn's way better.
Well,
It's way cheaper.
But Nick ended up being fairly decent for the Raiders, correct? Right? So if you say he's better, that he should be able to find a spot somewhere on an NFL roster. And
I think he will. I think he'll get paid to be a starter somewhere.
Right. And then I think the other aspect of this
That'll
to
be
look at is, and we talked to Zach Bond at the Super Bowl, at the podiums, of how that all went down with Dennis Allen. And he didn't take any pot shots at Dennis Allen. He just spoke to it as a timing issue and wasn't personal or anything like that. But it is fair to ask why Dennis Allen didn't see what the Eagles clearly saw in him.
Yeah, I think it's another Wisconsin linebacker. They're a little bit different, but they're also not. They're just guys that play football pretty well. And look, there's two things here. There's one thing we'll find out, and there's another thing we'll never know. But I'm probably never going to stop thinking about either. One is obviously just where he signs, the opportunity he gets, and ultimately how good he is. Right. Are we going to be talking about him being one that got away? Maybe not. Maybe. I don't know. The second one is, I've brought this up on the show before, and we're just never going to know the answers to that, and it's fine. I do wonder, had they never put the money into Tremaine Edmonds and just let Jack Sanborn play, how different it would be.
You have to wonder that.
I'm not trying to say he's better than Edmonds. Okay. I'm just saying I'm not sure it'd be as big of a drop-off as some might think, and clearly the Bears think.
Well, I think every linebacker's, has had a tall order here the last couple of years with a lack of a pass rush, and any good linebacker or corner will tell you I'm only as good as the pass rush in front of me. The Bears certainly lack that. So, once you are Jack Sanborn, you can't get downhill as much, and now you're, asked to be in coverage a little more because they can't get to the quarterback. Now that's going to expose you in different ways, right?
He's not great in coverage. That's 100% true.
Right.
But he also made a lot of plays.
I actually saw who tweeted yesterday that actually they had some numbers backing up that he's actually pretty good in coverage.
Well, that's interesting because he had some bad beats this year that I talked to him about it. He's like, I hated the entire part about that play. Like, he just owned it.
But we've, there was numbers that showed Tremaine Edmonds was fantastic in coverage in Buffalo, and TJ Edwards was obviously one of the best linebackers in coverage. When you come to the Bears and you can't get to the quarterback, good luck keeping that reputation, right? So now, task at hand obviously is offensive line priority one for the Bears, but they need to beef up the trenches on the other side of the football and start getting to the quarterback, and that'll have a trickle-down effect to everybody. I mean, I think Jack Sanborn is a solid player and should be able to make an impact somewhere in the NFL. But when you talk about tendering a guy or not tendering him and letting him walk away, it's a different sport. But when the Cubs didn't tender Kyle Schwarber, and now he's a superstar and was a superstar on this team, won a World Series, like, that's something to riot in the street for as a Chicago sports fan. Like, I wanted to go bang down Wrigley Field for that one. And now I have to watch him have the most home runs in MLB history in the playoffs every year. Like, this isn't that level with Jack Sanborn.
The frustrating part about that, you bring up that name, is, and Carman might remember this, I was one of the first people that said that the Cubs should trade for Jose Quintana, and Schwarber's the guy that I wanted them to get in that trade. Never happened. And I think they could have signed him later, too. Never happened.
You wanted the Sox to trade Quintana for Schwarber?
It's part of the package. Yeah.
You were on top of it, buddy.
Thank you.
You would have been a good White Sox.
You guys got Eloy. Thanks, Cubs. Idiots. We won that trade. We won that trade, Cody. Took us 6 years to get there, but we won that trade.
No, don't mock Benetti.
Shut up, Sean.
Dylan Cease was in that trade.
I've incited a riot with the.
Come on here and beat him up. I'm totally in favor of it.
I think everybody's lost. I think everybody's lost the trade.
All right, you guys go do a tavern style on who won that dumb trade that everybody lost.
I'm gonna bring us back to NFL. There's been a lot of news dropping during the show, so just
DK.
right in order. DK Metcalf requested trade. Seahawks are actually gonna explore that. And in addition to that, they released Tyler Lockett, so they could be out 2 wide receivers now. Christian Kirk released. Max Crosby signs an extension, so that's not happening, Bears fans.
Got a big deal.
And then the Raiders signed guard Alex Kappa as well.
What do you think DK would cost?
He has a big cap hit.
Just stop.
Second round.
They're not getting DK Metcalf.
Here we go again.
Here comes.
Why do you hate DJ Moore and Roma Dunze?
He does.
Listen,
there's no reason your brain should go there.
Okay. Listen to me.
No, please. I don't want to do this again.
Okay.
I don't want to.
Look.
Hey, who won the Quintana trade?
Listen, Hostile Hoge, when good players become available, do the thought exercise of what it would take to get him. DK Metcalf is a physical freak that looks like nothing the Bears have at wide receiver. I want to know what it would cost to get him. Just give me the details. Give me your best hope.
Text somebody and find out.
Well, that's what I'm going to do.
He's got a $32 million cap hit this year.
Okay.
That's all of our remaining.
Carm signed up.
See what Jackson Smith and Jigba thinks.
Listen,
our buddy.
Look.
Yeah, JSN's gonna benefit from all that. All right. Last point on Sanborn, if I can remember what it was before that got derailed by
Schwarber.
By a base.
Go ahead, last point.
By the way, you guys can't see this. The second that Quintana trade or Schwarber and Quintana got mentioned, the baseball guys in the studio just
got
swarmed
closer.
the set.
Sean almost stormed the set.
I thought,
well, they should have because it was a ridiculous thing that Greg just said.
yeah, but I thought like Jerry Springer was about to like go down. Like
100%. Whatever. This isn't a baseball podcast.
They already hate us, and then
trade.
you had a bad baseball take, and they wanted to come to kill us. I get it.
This isn't a baseball podcast, but they won the trade. I don't care. Now go on with your.
My point is with Sanborn, I think the part that's hard to accept from fans and honestly for me too. The Kevin Fishbane, I think, kept track of this. Like the splash plays per snap. And like the guy was just insane. Like when he was on the field, he was around the ball, he made plays on the ball. And obviously the Bears didn't feel like he was a full starter that could handle all the snaps. And maybe that gap would have widened, obviously, if he had played more. But it's just the fact that we'll never know until we see him get the opportunity with another team is, I think, what sucks.
Newsflash, and it's been a good day for the Bears, Joe Thuney and all. Being experts at talent evaluation, it ain't their thing yet. It just isn't.
Well, what's frustrating about that is they signed him as a UDFA. It was a great signing.
Right. You hit on one. Still didn't know what you had. It's all right. Don't worry about it. See what he does elsewhere.
All right. Let's get to Supers. Got quite a bit, I believe. Look at George Bayless coming in. £5 sterling. Bears had no leader on the offensive line. Now they have a captain. Thuney and Jackson gives Ben Johnson flexibility on the interior. Unblock Berlisi.
So I looked for this. I tried to unblock it. I don't see you blocked in there. So either there's a different name that it's under or something else.
I don't know. It's almost more fun now to again, George is my friend. But it's more fun now to just have him be blocked forever and we'll just have him keep sending in stuff. But I'm sorry, we're trying. We're trying, Berlissimo.
5-minute warning. Keep it rolling. Thank you very much.
Well, you can do one.
I'd love to.
How about you say that? And then you'll be the direct reason it goes 8 minutes.
I'm always ahead of the game.
Yeah. Go Purdue. I know that was at me, but I'm bringing it to you. Go Wisconsin. Go DK Metcalf.
Let me tell my
George Bayless, $2.
Let me tell my 6-minute Carrington story that I forgot to say.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. $2 to buy your guests some more copium? Copium.
God, you're an idiot.
What's copium?
You are so.
What's copium? Tell me what it is.
Copium.
Help cope with your loss.
You know, it's like, yeah.
Okay, that one went over my head. I don't apologize. Sorry. Copium. Anthony Myers, $5. Thank you so much, Anthony Myers. More $5. Left tackle at 10. Hashtag finish the job. Maybe they will, Anthony. Maybe they will. Edward the First. Did Shohei Ohtani retire or something?
I think that was in regards to Bobby Witt and Mahomes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, take that, Carrington. You get him, Edward. I appreciate you. Andre Amare, 5-something.
That's a good point.
Next step, sign Drew Dahlman, sign Khalil Mack on a team-friendly deal, draft Mason Graham, even if you need to trade up to do it.
I'm not in the big trade-up camp. I also
That's a lot.
am not going to be. I'm not in the big trade-up camp. I'm also not against bringing good players to the Bears. But I also, because I think Jonathan Wood, I was talking to you about this before the show, Adam, that the last 2 years, the amount of draft picks that the Bears, Ryan Poles has traded for veteran players. And obviously, we're all excited for Joe Thuney, but I don't want them. I want to add draft equity, not lose it.
I know. But other than giving up a second-round pick for Claypool, a fourth-rounder for an All-Pro, even last year, I know people are like so critical of Keenan Allen. Did it work completely? No. Was it worth the fourth-round pick? Probably.
Hindsight is 2020. I was excited to bring Keenan Allen in with the idea that it would work. The team sucked, so now I wish they hadn't done it. But hindsight's 2020. I'm just saying, I'm about the result of it. It didn't work out.
But my point is a mid-round pick
I'm sure
for
he's a good
established starters that have been Pro Bowlers or all pros in their career. Sign me up. Then when you get to the 6th and 7th round picks, dude, those are swings on draft day. Mm-hmm. So you want to use a 6th-round pick to go get a Jonah Jackson? I'm all for it. We're not. This isn't elite draft capital that's being given up in these trades.
Yeah, well, but Nate,
there were two. There was Montez Sweat, which hopefully still works.
Trey Smith was a 6th-round pick. I get it, outliers, but you can't just completely brush away picks. They do become players if you have a team that can develop talent.
All right, well, go look at Ryan Poles' 6th and 7th round picks.
$5, David Reitz. Jackson Thuney will be extended or restructured. Dahlman could 100% still fit into the cap picture of a 4-year deal, 13-14. Edge is the question. Hey, all making sense there, David. Thank you so much. Back to Anthony for $10. Draft a left tackle at 10. Hashtag finish the job. I think I already read that one. That's my bet. Or I guess there's 2 of them. All right, Anthony, you get double action there. Andrew Sullivan.
I'm with him, though. I mean, hey, two $10 super chats. We appreciate the support. I agree. If they draft a center, I know there's some fans, it's like split with Braxton Jones. I think Braxton Jones is talented, but if he has a good year, then you have to consider how much you're going to pay him. I would 1,000% sign off on them just tripling down on this, quadrupling down on this, bring in a left tackle at number 10, develop that, just make this, never a question again with this damn offensive line.
I hear you, baby. Maybe they will. $2 from Andrew Sullivan. Do not sleep on Judkins.
Not ringing a bell off the top of my head.
What are you talking about? The running back from Ohio State?
That's what the running back from Ohio State, right?
Judkins.
Okay.
Yeah. Damn right, don't sleep on him. Dude's a really good player. $5 from Pizzatola.
By the way, interesting note on that is where Fran has him ranked in his running backs.
Where does he have him ranked?
You got to watch
the All NFL show.
Got to listen to the All NFL show.
You got a lot of things to do today, buddy.
Sure do. Hogan Johns, All NFL. Wash Braggs' car. $5 from Pizzatola. On a rare case, I couldn't watch the live yesterday. So happy belated 3rd birthday to CHGO. Thank you so much, Pizzatola. I've been here since day one. Longer than Carm. Hashtag harmonica sucks.
You know what you could also do is pull up the draft guide you still haven't figured out how to open or find.
I don't know how to find it. I don't. Couldn't figure it out. I had it open on the show today. Thank you very much. Gabe Gardner. Do what? Last name is Gardenier. Thank you, Gardenier. I apologize. But Ho can say it French.
Gardenier.
Gardenhoser.
I like that one.
Gardenier. Thank you, Gardenier. We appreciate you. All right. You want the story of Carrington Harrison? I know you don't.
Not really.
But you're going.
We gotta go.
You're
going.
I've been
warning.
talking since 9 a.m. My voice is starting to.
All right. No story for you then.
Okay.
I'll tell the stories another time. It's a great one.
Yeah, that's probably best.
Yeah, that's probably best.
Okay.
Hey, shout out to everybody who helped out today, Steven and Sarah and Tony and whatnot around our breaking news show. Great job by everybody. Hoge was
Pat Norton too.
Pat Norton, straight domination.
Yep. Even Emma here, as she was leaving for vacation, heading to Mexico. Shout out to Emma.
Yeah, no doubt. And Emma just texted me, so she wants to hear the Carrington story. So what happened was,
if you're on the Metro around, I don't know what time your train is, but if you happen to be on that Metro, Carm will tell you that story, and you'll be very
220. 220.
220
I got to pick up some people today.
All right.
Okay.
We're gone.
We're done. It's over. No more fun for anybody. Show's over. We'll see you tomorrow at noon. Big guest tomorrow. Don't know who it is, but we'll find you one. That's the plan.
All right. Check out all our content. Become a diehard. We got programming all day. Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to you. We'll talk to you all tomorrow at noon.
We all silly like the mayor.